Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today's film is X-Men. As a comic book fan and an X-Men fan, you'd always hear about an X-Men movie, and you assume that one would happen because X-Men was such a big comic book, and it was a big TV show, so you always knew they were working on it, but it just seemed like it would never ever happen. There's a section in Wizard Comics, and you'd read through it, it would tell you all the comic book movies that might happen, but the dates for these things to come out were like 97 and it'd be like 93 and then it would never happen. And then if it did happen, you knew that they would just kind of treat the comic books more like intellectual properties that they had somehow gotten this awesome deal with, rather than having any sort of love or interest in the actual material itself. And that was just kind of how comic book movies were. And I think this first X-Men movie is very much like that. It's a comic book movie. I mean, obviously it is, but I left and go, well, for a comic book movie, it's not so bad. And really, it's not.
I kind of looked back on it as the end of the era of like Steel and Spawn and Howard the Duck and, you know, all these comic book movies that would be made with very little respect to the original comic books.
It doesn't really treat every single character very well. What they did to Rogue, I mean, why did they make Rogue Kitty Pryde or Jubilee? Why not just have Kitty Pryde or Jubilee? I don't really understand whose idea it was to change Rogue into this Kitty Pryde / Jubilee character, but why not use the characters that are made to be that character in that universe, rather than forcing this one to be... That never made any sense to me. Sabretooth is just like a grunting goon. That was entirely a wasted opportunity. Storm, that's just... I really don't like what they did to Storm, because it seems like they didn't even care. They just had her there to have her there. Cyclops and Jean Grey aren't really given that much room to really shine at all. I mean, you know very little bits about them. The only characters that are really given kind of enough attention are Wolverine and Magneto and Professor Xavier. Those are the three I feel like they developed pretty well. Everybody else kind of falls short, and I think that's one of the major problems with this movie. Hugh Jackman's probably, I think, maybe my favorite performance in this film. Not that this film is really known for acting or anything. Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart are both pretty good, but I think Hugh Jackman really does that star turn performance. Everyone kind of knew he was going to become a star. I remember people before I saw the film were like, you know, he's going to be a big star, and then he was. I think he's really good as Wolverine. He's like almost perfect. I don't really even want to imagine who will play Wolverine after him, because to me he's perfect for Wolverine. Someone I also like in this movie is Ray Park as Toad. I kind of prefer kind of Gollum-y Toad from Pride of the X-Men to his, really, but I still like seeing Ray Park and stuff, even though he's always in lame movies like this and Episode 1 and G.I. Joe. He's never in really a good movie, and I never liked Mystique. Mystique was always so much more vocal in the comics. They made all these great villains into being like Magneto's goons, and maybe sometimes they were, but they were a little more complicated than that. One of the things I think that really hurts this film is that they finished filming in March and this came out in July, so of the same year. I don't think Bryan Singer had really enough time to make a refined first X-Men movie, so what we get is this. It's not shot in a very interesting way. It's kind of like dull. And if you look at other action movies around the same time, like The Matrix and really kinetic, crazy stunts and all this, the stunts in this aren't really that well filmed. I look at this film as like a restrained Hollywood blockbuster style. Bryan Singer shows a strong Richard Donner influence in this movie. I don't know if that really worked for it necessarily. I think Richard Donner has a little more fun than he did on this movie, and it showed like a Spielberg-Lucas influence as well. I don't think Bryan Singer's style really worked with this film, but this film was such of a kind of a mess. This film doesn't show a great love of X-Men. It doesn't show the love a director usually has for his material that you would expect from a comic book movie now. I mean, they got it made, and I think that's important because this is kind of the first studio superhero movie in which Marvel really pushed for. As soon as they got X-Men made, you knew things were like turning around. You knew Marvel was kind of getting the gears in motion, and you know, if they make an X-Men movie and it does well, maybe they'll make a Spider-Man movie.
In a way, I look at this film like I look at Birth of a Nation. You know, it's certainly an amazing achievement. That doesn't mean I necessarily like it, but it is certainly an amazing achievement that they did it.
This is from the lost era of settling for a comic book movie. Now, I don't think we would settle for this. I think now we'd be really pissed off if this came out. But I think that shows you the evolution of not just like comic book movies, but geek culture in general, where 11 years ago they wouldn't really take this that seriously in Hollywood. But of all the movies that I say it's a comic book movie to, I've never really hated this one as much, and I think it's for that reason, just because I wanted everybody to shut up and I just wanted the ball to get rolling, because it was so many times I'd read that part in Wizard where they tell you all the movies that were going to come out, and it seemed like they were never going to come out, and that they made a X-Men movie, you know? Kind of like, I like the idea of this film, but I don't really like this film, I don't think. I think I only watch it for the nostalgia and to do this review and because I like X-Men. But if those things weren't around, I think I probably would have seen this movie once and been done with it, and that's probably the best. So if you have seen X-Men and you would like to talk about it, comment below down there, and subscribe if you would like to. So tomorrow I'm going to put out a video for X-Men 2, and then the day after that I'm going to put out a video for X-Men 3, and then sometime in the weekend, or hopefully the day after the third X-Men video, X-Men First Class, but we'll see. And that's it, so keep watching, I guess.